Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Land Use Control Board meeting of March the 12th, 20. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Whitehead, would you proceed, please?
Mr. Fleming.
Here.
Mr. Gill.
Here.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Norcross.
Here.
Ms. O'Connell.
Here.
Dr. Pritchard.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Tolles.
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks.
Here.
Chair Sharp.
Here.
We have a full complement.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. I'd like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located at the back of the room. That's to my right and to your left. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendance speaker's card. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of our OPD people over to my right. When the agenda item is called, you will be given an opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purposes of maintaining a quorum. I would now like to get an approval of our minutes from the last meeting. May I please have a motion?
So moved, Madam
Second.
Chair.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and second. Is there any discussion? Corrections? Any discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Whitehead, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Yes, ma'am. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent calendar for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After that consent calendar is established and approved, we'll move on to the regular calendar. For each case on the regular calendar, OPD staff will give a staff presentation, followed by an applicant's presentation, and then testimony from those in support. Following that, the opposition will have an opportunity to provide testimony. Each side will be given a total of 10 minutes, and then at the end of those two periods of 10 minutes, the applicant will be given a 3-minute rebuttal period. This time period does not include Q&A between board members and people providing testimony, and the chair may provide both sides an equal amount of additional time. However, if after the board closes the public hearing and wants to reopen the public hearing for additional testimony, a 2/3 affirmative vote is required, and at which point both sides will be given an equal amount of opportunity to speak. If any member of the audience wishes to provide verbal testimony, there are speakers' cards to your left, and we will, once you speak, you'll go to the front podium in front of you. With that, Madam Chair, those are my procedures.
Okay, thank you. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony, support, in any opposition to a case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker card. And again, that's to your left and to my right. These are available at the desk. The Land Use Control Board is a supporter of community involvement, and we certainly welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We're respectful of the fact that you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today, but we ask that your comments be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try not to be repetitive with your side's limited time. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to silence your cell phone so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings. With our proceedings now explained, I would like to introduce to you to my right, Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read the items in item 1 through 11 that are going to be on the consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of these items individually, please come forward and give us the item number and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, will you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Item number 2, case S1801 in Whitehaven. The request is a 2-year time extension for a 19-lot subdivision on the east side of McCorkle, north of Hale. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. We do acknowledge there has been a card of support, but unless they would like to speak, we'll just keep this one on consent. Item number 3, case S20-04 in Raleigh. The request is an 81-lot subdivision at the northeast corner of Highland and James. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 4, case SAC 20-02 in South Memphis. The request is a closure of an alley between McLemore and Simpson west of Willoughby. Item number 6, case PD 97-364 in Cordova. The request is an increase in the shopping center sign area at 2324 North Germantown Parkway. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 7, case PD 08-333 in Cordova. The request is 12 townhomes on the west side of Appling, south of Dexter. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 8, case PD 20-02 in East Memphis. The request is a 2-lot residential development at 55455 South Urban. Staff recommendation is a hold. Item number 11, case Z20-01 in Capleville. The request is a rezoning of 4195 East Shelby Drive from CA Agriculture to EMP Light Industrial. Staff recommendation is approval. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Anyone now wishing to pull a case from the consent agenda, please come forward and give us the item number. Anybody wishing to pull anything from that consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, the items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with one vote subject to the recommendation of the OPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only item numbers left will be heard. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve. Item number 2, case S1801. Item number 3, case S20-04. Item number 4, case SAC 20-02. Item number 6, case PD 97-364. Item number 7, case PD 08-333. Item number 8, case PD 20-02. And item number 11, case Z20-01.
Second.
Okay, I've had a motion and we hear a second. Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Pritchard is ready for our regular agenda. Dr. Pritchard, will you call the item number and case number?
Yes. Agenda item number 1, SUP 19-41 Glenview, cell tower at 1883 Lamar. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Good morning, all. Teresa Shelton with the Office of Planning and Development. Case number SUP 1941, request for a 135-foot CMSC cell tower in the commercial mixed-use 3 district and historic preservation zoning district. General information, the site is located at 1883 Lamar Avenue. Zone atlas page is 2130 and 2135, parcel number 03107300003. Existing zoning is commercial mixed use 3 in the Glenview Historic District. There was a neighborhood meeting held at 5 o'clock on Thursday, January 14th, 2020 at the Glenview Community Center, 1141 South Barksdale. Also, there were 157 public notices mailed out on February 3rd, 2020, and a total of 2 signs posted at the subject property, and the sign affidavit has been added to this report. This is the actual location of the subject property, highlighted there in pink. Here's the vicinity map showing, the areas where notices were mailed. This is an aerial map of the location. Zoning map here shows placement of where the cell tower, the proposed cell tower, is supposed to be erected. Land use map showing the different zones and areas around, and the subject site highlighted by the pink star. This is their location plan for the cell tower, showing the entranceway will be off of South Barksdale, which you probably can't hardly see it there, but you'll see the placement of the cell tower there. And this is a site plan showing conditions for the landscaping around the cell tower and the site. This is an actual drawing of the cell tower, what it will look like once it's finished, the elevation of it. The site survey. And just a couple of site photos. It's an area view at the top, just showing you the actual location, what it looks like. This is sorry about that. That's your entrance if you're coming off Lamar for the proposed cell tower site. It'll be, I think, on the side of the transformer pole, on the left side, I believe that's what that is. These are other site photos, and this just shows you the shared access entrance that they will be coming in off of South Barksdale Street. In conclusion, the request is for a 35-foot cell tower in the commercial mixed-use 3 historic preservation zoning district. Staff agrees the approval criteria in regard to special use permits as set out in the Unified Development Code section 9.6.9 are met. Staff agrees the requirements for the special use permits for cell towers as set out in the Unified Development Code paragraph 2.62I1 are met. This project will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent properties, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, utility facilities, and other matters affecting the public health, safety, and general welfare. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. This site shall have 2 buffers that will consist of Class 3 buffers as described in section 4.6.5D3, type C. The first buffer shall surround the outside of the existing chain link fence along the southern south of the site and along the western side of the existing utility building with buffer plantings consisting of foster hollies, number 2. The second buffer shall be around the base of the tower with buffer plantings consisting of needlepoint hollies. All required landscaping shall be maintained by the tower owner or owners. The existing chain link fence and access gates surrounding the leased area may remain as a chain link fence and gate. The equipment compound shall be screened with an 8-foot site-proof wooden fence, and a wooden double swing gate will be provided for access into the tower. The sectorized antennas shall extend a maximum of 10 feet from the monopole structure. Final approval of design if the tower and items containing conditions 1 through 3 are subject to approval by the Memphis Landmarks Commission. A study from the professional engineer which specifies the tower's height, design including a cross-section of the structure demonstrates the tower's compliance with applicable structure standards, including a certification that the tower will withstand at a minimum sustained winds in accordance with the appropriate building codes and description of the tower's capacity, including the number and types of antennas which it can accommodate, shall be submitted to the Office of Construction Code Enforcement staff before any permits are issued. Last, access the equipment compound shall be taken from South Barksdale Street as shown on the site plan. That is the end of that.
Is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, would the applicant please come forward? And you have 10 minutes to make your presentation, and we need your name and address as you come forward.
My name is Jerry Gingrich. I live at 1574 Campbell Road, Goodlettsville, Tennessee. I'm a consultant for Verizon Wireless, and we appreciate the staff support for this application with the conditions, and we find the conditions ones that we can live with. As you're all aware that the need for wireless is ever increasing, and in order to meet that need, Verizon constantly has to add antennas. And when they assign a particular area for us to find a site, we scrub the site, try to find possible locations. We try to stay as far away from residences as we can. For this particular area, there were 3 possibilities. One was the subject property, one would have been the railroad, and one would have been the park. We had approached the park. They were not interested at that particular location. The railroad didn't have any room. But for our subject property, the landlord was willing to work with us. So that's how we've ended up with this particular site. We checked with Verizon about moving it to other locations, and there didn't seem to be any other locations that would meet the need.
Okay. All right. We're going to hear from the supporters, and then we'll get questions from our board, from the applicant and supporters. We're ready for you. Name and address,
My name
please.
is Adam McElvin. My address is 60 Crooked Creek Cove in Oakland, Tennessee. And I am the RF engineer for Verizon that does the RF design for all the macro structures, small cells, and anything going on in the West Tennessee, North Mississippi area. So I'm just here to speak towards it if you guys have any questions on the need for it or, anything along those lines.
Okay. Board members, do we have any questions of either the applicant and or supporters and or representative? Hearing none, we're ready to hear from the opposition. If you come forward and give your name and address, and remember you have 10 minutes, so if you got 10 people, everybody needs to kind of abide by the rules and the time limit. We have several cards of opposition. You can come up and give us your name and address.
My name is Bertha Reeves.
Just a minute. Let me ask something. Is this microphone ready for them to speak? It is? Okay, you can go to the podium and speak. Your name is?
Okay, my name is Bertha Reeves, 1689 Kendall Avenue in the Glenview neighborhood. And I would like to read my report. It's about Glenview's Arboretum. And Arboretum is an area where there's a significant amount of woody vegetation in tree form that is cultivated for educational, scientific, and aesthetic purposes. In 2007, a group of us organized the creation of the Glenview Park Arboretum. It is located within the 24.5 acre historic Glenview Park. There's a walking trail, and the majority of the trees are along the trail. The reason for the creation, to increase visitors' knowledge of trees, to provide information or explain tree-related issues, such as what species grow in this area, how to plant the right tree in the right spot, and how to identify trees. Excuse me. In 2011, we identified 36 mature, healthy trees in the park. A level 1 only requires 30 trees, but our goal was a level 2. We planted 33 additional trees that were only inches in height. To date, they are healthy trees, 5, 6, 7 feet high. The 2013 Arbor Day celebration was held in Glenview Park in hopes that the park would one day be an arboretum. In 2015, Glenview Park Arboretum received its level 1 certification from the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. A level 1 requires 30 different tree species, labeled with the common and scientific name. In 2016, we received certification for a level 2. A level 2 requires 60 different species of trees labeled with the common and scientific name. Each year, we host some type of tree-related activities that includes neighbors, residents, and friends. The activities involve Earth Day celebration, art, Arbor Day celebration, youth, tree maintenance, and more. The Tennessee Urban Forestry Council hosts a conference each year. The climax of the conference is to present an award of excellence to select individuals. Individuals are selected for outstanding leadership, educational efforts, or activities that have made a significant contribution to establishing and maintaining vibrant community forestry in Tennessee. The award program is sponsored by the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. Previous awards were given to 8 categories. Last year, 2019, they added a new category, an arboretum category. The award was given to recognize a community group or school that proactively uses their arboretum for exemplary educational activities. And there are more than 7 arboretums in the Western Tennessee region. Glenview Park Arboretum received the first award for excellence. This past summer, 2019, Glenview Park Arboretum partnered with Glenview Community Center, Park Service, and the Memphis Tree Board to host a summer camp for 120 plus students, summer camp students. This year, 2020, plans are being made to expand the program. Research shows that wireless kills trees. A 6-year study of trees around wireless cell towers revealed the invisible damage of exposure to RF radiation. Radiation from wireless technology is now jeopardizing the health of our trees and other plants. Research shows more recently, it has been shown that mortality rate of all dominant tree species in the western United States have been doubling every 17 to 29 years in old growth forests. And that recruitment of new trees is now occurring at a lower rate than mortality. Scientists in Germany study trees damaged in relation to electromagnetic radiation for 9 years. And they concluded they found significant difference between the damaged side of a tree facing a foam-type mass and the opposite side. Finally, we have 63 different species of trees in our arboretum. It would be devastating to lose one tree due to RF radiation from the cell tower. The spot selected for the cell tower is in close proximity to the park. We are not opposed to cell towers. However, we are opposed to it being placed at this location. It will cause great damage to our trees, and it will erase 13 years of work and energy made by a group of residents in the historic Glenview neighborhood. Our main purpose is and always has been to provide an educational resource for our next generation and to save our trees, not only for the benefit provided to humans, but for the survival of our wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. We have 2 more speakers designated to speak, and I think you have about 4 minutes. Please give us your name and address.
Hi, My name is Sandra Gale Warner. I live at 1840 Waverly Avenue, and I'm here on behalf of the opposition of the cell tower. The arboretum that we have is very beautiful, and we've worked hard in the Glenview area to keep things going. Glenview is also known as it's a historic district. And I'm interested in what guidelines are you going by in order to allow a cell tower to go up in this particular location. It's also my understanding that the cell tower needs to be 500-meter buffers away from human activity, when this proposed cell tower, is only 100-meter buffers away. And I'm just not getting it. We're not against cell towers per se, but it's not bringing anything to our neighborhood. We're in a historic district. It's not bringing in any economy. It's not offering Glenview anything. We're talking about one tower as of right now, but that one tower is going to grow. It's going to be bigger than that. And that whole look, how can it be allowed in a historic district? Is this within the guidelines? Because to me, it's just not a fair move. We're not against towers. We just feel that they could find another location.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have one more speaker designated, Mr. Yates.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is James Yates. I have two properties in Memphis, one in the Glenview area and one in the South Memphis area. I am a member of my Glenview organization, and we are very much in opposition to the cell tower construction. The biggest reason is we want to do everything that we can do to preserve our historic district. This cell tower is at the front door of our historic district. It's at the front door of the park, Glenview Community Center, that we call home. And we are looking to do everything and raise as many voices as we possibly can to oppose this construction. We ask that this body does not allow this construction to take place. There's a lot of reasons and data. Ms. Reeves and Ms. Gale did not mention the health effects that the data is not yet in on. We do not know what the health effects of RF is on elderly or children. We do have sufficient data to know that the effect on our arboretum would be devastating. We ask you not to allow this construction to take place, and we are in this for the long haul, and I appreciate you taking my time and hear my comments.
Okay, sir, can you give us your address? You never gave us a distinct
1830 Glenview.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Board members, do we have any questions from either of the opposition people, Mr. Yates, Ms. Reeves, or Ms. Warner?
Madam Chair, I don't have a question directed to them, but I would like for the ones who came out this morning in opposition to this tower to stand, please. I know we had several letters in opposition. Just wanted to see who you were. Thank you. Thank you.
We do have elderly people in our neighborhood, people that have been living there 40 years and so they maybe cannot participate, but they are with us in this.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will give the applicant a 3-minute rebuttal period, and you might take a little more time because you didn't take your full 10 minutes.
I really don't have anything to add. I'm not an expert on trees. I'm not aware that there's damage to trees from RF waves. So I can't really speak to that. But otherwise, we're trying to do what we can to make as inconspicuous as possible with the screening and all that.
And I'm not aware of any of the studies about the trees. You know, we've had cell towers. This is the same technology that's been going in all over Shelby County. I haven't seen any ill effects towards the trees. We're not doing anything different than we haven't done in the past. So like Jerry said, I'm not an expert on the tree situation, but everything that I've seen, I haven't seen anything to that. I don't see any trees dying around any of the sites that we currently have in Memphis. And as we stated earlier, we're very limited on where any of the towers can go in that area because it's a historic district. So as you have sites around it, the interior of that historic district, the homes, trying to get RF to where the users are and to be able to get the data and the throughput and the things that they constantly need in the network, you know, us trying to find a suitable location, that was the best one that we could come up with to meet the design needs and where our customers need the service.
Thank you. Let me ask Mr. Whitehead a question. By this being in a historic district, is there any way that there could be a request that the tower be in a different shape, form, or fashion than it's recommended?
Yes, ma'am. In addition to the ability of this body sending the tower through the system with some sort of additional design guidelines, this is a three-step process, and I'm speaking to the citizens mainly here. We will have 3 public hearings. God willing, we will continue to have public hearings. Land Use Control Board today. This passes up to City Council. But then the design of the tower will be really discussed at the 3rd public hearing, and that's the Landmarks Commission. Since this is in a landmarks district, it will go to them, and that is if I may take an opportunity to speak to the law, the Telecommunications Act, at least as defined by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, bars any consideration of environmental and health effects. However, there does seem to be a narrow stream of cases that when towers are in historic districts and they do not meet the design of the prevailing architecture, that does provide, in my estimation, the best, if not only, opportunities for a community to reject a cell tower. We've often talked about cell towers in our Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals are almost by right utilities. When they're in landmarks districts, that may not be the case. But to answer your question briefly, if I can make that attempt now, you could add design conditions, or you could just send it to the Landmarks Commission as is and let them chew on it.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Go ahead.
Of the applicant. Can you address, one of the opposers mentioned about 100 meters versus 500?
I'm not aware of the distances required. Are you aware of the distances required?
So,
Okay.
again, we try to stay within a particular location. We try to stay as far from residences as we can, and our measurements, I think we're 200 feet from any residence, or 200 and some feet.
And Mr. Thomas, if I may, the code speaks to distances in 2 respects with regard to single-family homes. One is if you're some distance, it's either 1,000 or 1,500 feet from a residence, the tower can be erected by right. And if it's within that distance, it has to go through this public hearing process. Then number 2, there's a bare minimum of 100 feet that a tower, and that, I think is in consideration of the fall radius, a bare minimum of 150 feet. And this tower does not meet the former, but does meet the latter.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. If there aren't any more questions of the applicant, then we will close the public portion of this meeting. Dr. Pritchard, thank you.
Move approval of agenda item number 1, case number SUP 19-41.
Second.
I've heard a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Any discussion?
Yes. Madam Chair, there are a lot of unknowns, as one of these folks mentioned, about cell towers and about the radiation they emit and that sort of thing. I do not think it would affect the trees. In fact, many of the cell towers today are designed to look like trees. A major one being out on Walnut Grove Road near Independent Presbyterian. And I think because there is so little in the literature about the exact health risk about cell towers and how they are needed in all locations practically, that for right now, we can assume that they are safe for people and trees.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair, I realize, there's a need for cell towers, and I think, we should have them. In fact, there's a need for them, so we gotta have them. But I have a problem, I guess, with the location of this one. When I look at the gateway into that area, those parks, and I'm familiar with the area, I just can't see how it can be an improvement to it. I just feel like it'd be a negative impact on the community as well as the neighborhood if this tower was in that location. So I can't support it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I can't really remember ever voting against a cell tower. I frankly think that they're needed. The tower that Dr. Pritchard mentioned, I'm very familiar with. It's right in the middle of a residential district too. But I'm actually not going to support this case. I really cannot remember a time that I've not voted for one. But in this case, looking at how it's right at the entry to this park in this historic district, it just feels a little funny. Now, if the calls start dropping in that neighborhood, it's not my fault if this case passes. But in this instance, I'm not going to support this case.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Any further discussion? Hearing none. I assume we're ready to vote. Are we gonna do a individual, all in favor? Those opposed? No?
No.
I'll do a roll call. Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
No. Mr. Tolles?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Ms. O'Connell?
No.
Mr. Norcross?
No.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
No.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
No.
And Chair Sharp?
No.
We have 9 noes, 1 yay.
Motion fails. Thank you. Dr. Pritchard?
We'll go next, Madam Chair, to agenda item number 5. SE 20-01 downtown, special exception to paragraph 8.2.8E1 to permit superfluous parking spaces to be paved with impervious material where previous material is required at 289 Washington Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Is the applicant present? Is the applicant present? Yes. Okay, is there any opposition?
Madam Chair, excuse me, please show me recused from this case.
Okay. Is there any opposition?
Madam Chair, if you recall, this is a case in which the applicant contests a few of our conditions.
Okay. So are we gonna hear the case or hear the applicant?
Well, we can just go straight to the chase, and Mr. Davis can do an abbreviated staff report focusing on the conditions in question, and then turn it over to Mr. Applicant.
Okay.
So, yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Members of the board, members of the public. Special exception 20-1. So just for some general information, we're looking at 389 Washington Avenue. This is Washington and High, as well as Adams and High, owned by the city of Memphis. The applicant is Memphis Fire Services, represented by Michael Rogers of Fisher Arnold. And again, the request is to waive the pervious parking requirement, which is a requirement that the parking spaces themselves be made with pervious materials, meaning materials that allow water to seep through. The area of the site is 1.5 acres, and the zoning is Central Business District with the Medical District overlay. So here is the location downtown. Okay, here's just an aerial photograph of the site. Here are the 1.5 acres shaded that we're looking at. So that building to the south is the proposed fire station. The building to the north in that shaded area is an existing metal building on site, and we see lots of new parking being proposed on site. We'll also note High Street to the east is shaded. If you recall, in 2019, case to close that street, that portion of the street went before this board for the purpose of this project. It was approved. So again, zoning CBD with medical district overlay. I'll go through the photos quickly. Washington Avenue, High Street, some more photographs of High Street as well as Adams Avenue. Here's the landscape plan. So what we see here is the result of some work that OPD has done with the fire department to show some proposed rain gardens and bioswales on site. So those rain gardens and bioswales have inlets in them and are meant to capture and filtrate water. So we see three. There's a larger one in the southeast, as well as another one to the west of that, and one along the former High Street to the north. So this is sort of where we've gotten so far. And these have lots of flowering plants and other sorts of plants that really suck up water. So why are we doing this sort of thing? Well, we took a look at our resilience plan, our regional resilience plan. And the resilience plan states that an assortment of low impact development techniques, low impact development meaning development that captures rainwater on site, should be used in conjunction with one another. So in this case, staff recommends the replacement of pervious pavement with several other LID tools. And I have some images from that plan just showing the diversity of LID techniques that may be used on site, including rain gardens, rainwater harvesting, and bioswales. So in conclusion, the medical district, I'm on the second bullet point, the medical district requires that all surface parking spaces provided over the minimum parking requirement be paved with pervious material, while the central business district establishes a minimum parking requirement of 0 spaces for all uses. For this reason, all proposed surface parking spaces on this site are required to be paved with pervious material. The Land Use Control Board is authorized to grant exceptions to medical district parking requirements. The project engineer has provided convincing evidence that the soil conditions and high water table of the site present difficulties associated with the long-term success of pervious pavement in this location. Furthermore, the applicant is proposing significantly less parking than would be required for a fire station of similar size located outside of the central business district. The Office of Planning and Development, the Office of Sustainability and Resilience, which is a sister department in DPD, and Memphis Fire Services have collaborated. Maybe there's a little more pushback from the fire department than we realized going into this, but to create a proposal that utilizes alternative low-impact design water management techniques. And we do find that as conditioned, this proposal would meet the special exception approval criteria, it meets the resilience plan, and it would lessen the city's burden during stormwater events and improve water quality. So let's take a look at our conditions more specifically, and I think I know, and I won't speak for the applicant, but I know where the opposition lies. So we are recommending conditions that require 3 LID techniques or an equivalent alternative as proposed by the fire department later on. So the first would be bioswales, so linear bioretention with inlets along both the vacated High Street and perhaps along some of the parking spaces. So water runoff from the parking spaces would flow down into this area, which would be depressed. A 10,000-gallon cistern would be provided to store rainwater, especially rainwater that would be falling otherwise on the roof, and that could be used for irrigation or other gray water applications. And we're calling for this rain garden. The metric we have proposed to measure this impact is that the first inch of rainfall during stormwater events should be captured on site, meaning it would not be going into the city's drainage system. And the fire department is authorized by this condition to propose alternative metrics as well as alternative LID techniques during site plan review later on in the process. The first three conditions were discussed with the fire department, suggested to some degree by the fire department in a meeting, and I think there are concerns about the cost. And the final condition with the 1 inch requirement comes from regulation in Nashville. They have that regulation for all development, and I believe is being pushed by the state. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none. We'd like to hear from the applicant. If you would state your name and address, please.
Yes, ma'am. My name's Stephen Chastain. I'm the Officer of Fire Planning for the City of Memphis. I live at 4413 Garner Place in Bartlett. I just want to preface, we have Mark Conder here who represents our design team. But our job in the fire service, of course, is to be diligent with the taxpayers' funds, good stewards of the land. We have a lot of different criteria that impacts the decisions that we make. We didn't come here to oppose really anything, but if you saw the property that's in question in the slides, we're trying to make dramatic improvements to that property, and the director and the command staff feel like, you know, in the spirit of trying to improve the property and make it better for the neighborhood, for development, choices have to be made, financial choices and other considerations, and one of which she has brought up to me a couple of times is the 10,000 gallon cistern. She's read reports, and of course, being the position she's in, she's aware of health crises that happen across the country and kind of watches that as they may relate to Memphis. But one of her concerns early on about that, when I proposed it to her before we ever met with the Office of Sustainability, was that could this cause a listeria outbreak? A lot of times water containment, that's where they come from. How would we treat that? Could that turn into a public relations nightmare for the city of Memphis and for the fire service? And I've really never gotten any good answers on that. So, but that is one of our concerns about storing water and putting water back on, you know, on the ground to disperse it. Listeria outbreaks happen, you know, in cooling towers where water's captured and reused. So that was a concern of ours too. So without more study, we don't want to agree to say, okay, our hands are tied to doing these certain things. But what we do want to do is be good stewards of the taxpayers' funds and improve the area in which we're going to do construction. But I'll let Mr. Connors speak more to that.
This is Michael Rogers, Fisher Arnold. Just to add to what he said.
Name and address. Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael Rogers with Fisher Arnold, 9180 Crestwind Hills Drive.
Thank you.
All right. Again, I want to back up a little bit to the pervious pavement requirement, which is driving all this, and it's kind of grown into what TDEC is pushing, which I'll get into that a little bit. So we've moved from the pervious pavement is a requirement, as Brett said, that's a part of the conditions for the central business district. It would have been capturing a small amount of water, certainly not 1 inch of the whole site, nowhere close to it. The problem we had with pervious pavement, if you read my letter, was that in this location, we have high water table. The Gayaso, the old Gayaso Bayou is at the west end. Obviously, we're downtown, low area. In fact, the only reason this is not in a floodplain is protected by levee. But when the river gets high and Gayaso Bayou backs up, there's old drainage that's been there for a number of years. The site's heavily saturated. The buildings happen to be built on grade beams with geopiers, so there's a lot of costs already there. So my concern was introducing water to the soil anyhow, but also our soil types around here are not conducive to pervious pavement because you got a low infiltration rate. So even we didn't want whatever little bit could to infiltrate into the soil because it could cause the saturation issue again. But the second thing was it will not do it fast enough, so you have to put an under drain system in this area when you use it. So you're actually not capturing 1 inch of rain when you do a pervious pavement. Even on that surface, you're just filtering it through, which will remove some pollutants, not as much as if it infiltrated, but then you're draining it off. The problem you get in there is during periods of time like we've been through. Of course, we've had a mild winter, but if we didn't have a real mild winter, you get freeze and thaw that busts up the pervious pavement. So as I said in the letter, it's unsustainable. We're certainly agreeable to any practices that are sustainable and practical, but this is neither here. So as an alternative to working with the Office of Plan and Development, the fire department met, as Brett said. I was not involved in that meeting, but they met with them and talked about, and they threw out some of these suggestions. And so on two of them, on cases one and on conditions 1 and 2, the bioswales and the rain gardens, they're fine with that. They'll put that in. There's not a lot of excessive cost in that. That's rain. That's areas that's going to be saturated. You got plants in that'll hopefully take the water. And if you get real saturated a long period of time, there's raised inlets that you can run off and drain off. The concern with number 2, as he shared, is, well, it's a practical cost and a practical reason. That cistern and irrigation system would cost close to $90,000. By comparison, the pervious pavement would have cost about $60,000. So about $90,000 for that system. The problem is in here is if you're capturing every rain event, 1 inch rain event, which TDEC's pushing, which the city of Memphis through their engineering and public works, as well as many other municipalities and interest groups are fighting TDEC on because it's unrealistic and unachievable in this area. The problem with that is, think of what we've had since we've been South Seattle since October here in Memphis. Since 1940 to present, 94% of all rain events in Memphis and Shelby County, and it's measured, 1 inch is measured a 1 inch fall over 24 hours. So if you got 1.5 inches over 2 days, it's still a 1 inch event and less than a 1 inch event. 94% of all rain events, you would have to capture every single drop of water off the site. 94%, think about that. So what are you gonna do with that water? They say irrigate. Well, what will you have irrigated between November and now? So what would happen? We're collecting water, holding it in this tank, as he said. If you hold it for a long enough period, you're introducing health issues. And then what are you gonna do? You're gonna pump it off and drain it, which it would have done in the first place. So it's a real expensive thing. And I agree, we need to look at low impact development ideals and so forth, but they need to be practical and sustainable. And I know, working through engineering, working myself with certain committees and different things, we're looking for options that work for Memphis and Shelby County to address it. And because of this thing that EPA kind of pushed down, it actually started a number of years ago when from the Chesapeake Bay Water Protection Agency came up with what they call runoff reduction. And they basically said, hey, pollutants are in the water. We're not treating the pollutants. That's the best way to do it. Let's capture all the water. That was where you got sandy soils and you got rocky soils and you got good infiltration. Maybe you could achieve that. But in places where you can't, I know Virginia sued EPA and won a number of years ago. The home builders, I worked with the home builders and other interest groups about 3 or 4 years ago. We met with TDEC in Nashville. They were first bringing this up, starting to tell them, say it's unachievable, can't be done. And because of that, they still kept pushing it. The lobbyists went to the state legislature, and the state legislature passed a law that said that TDEC cannot enforce anything that's more stringent or greater than the Clean Water Act requires. It was basically in conjunction with this 1 inch thing. And so the reason they haven't. The other problem is that TDEC and EPA, a lot of times they're measuring pollutants by total suspended solids. In Loosahatchee, Wolf River, Nonconnah, Big Creek, up in Millington, the #1 total suspended solid is sediment. More than 95% of all sediment comes from outside of Shelby County in our streams. They come from the Farming in Tipton County and Fayette County and wherever else it's draining upstream in the upper basin. We believe urban pollutants is what needs to be addressed in it. Phosphorus, things like that, nitrates and so forth. And so like I said, there's committees working, trying to come up with a water quality when the stormwater drainage manual was revised in the water quality aspect, and is find things that are realistic, that are sustainable, and that will improve water quality. None of this will. And so all that just to say, conditions 1, 3, and 4 we're fine with. Condition 2, we would like it to be worded that that the owner will consider it. They're considered, if they get the funding, they'll put it in and do it. Item 5, we're asking that it's totally struck from the conditions because, again, it's an unattainable condition, and it's really a grievous condition, honestly.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Why not, do you have other detention on the site for stormwater, underground detention?
No, because
above ground?
we're in the lower part of the basin. That's the other thing. Downtown's in the lower part of the basin. The lower part of the basin, you don't want to hold water up. You want it to be gone. You want it to get out. And so there's no detention here. From a stormwater quality and stormwater standpoint, you want water out here as quick as you can get it out. You don't want it hanging around.
I will say that on this property, normally when we go and develop a property, it has a lot of vegetation and whatnot on it. This is a completely paved property except for a small section, and we will introduce more vegetation than what is presently there.
Yeah, and if you read my letter, I don't know if you did, if you look in the letter, you'll see that we are increasing the impervious area considerably from what it is now. Obviously, it's almost all paved in buildings at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in support? Anyone else in support? Anybody in opposition? Okay, do we have any other questions for the people in support, for the applicant and representative? Hearing none, then we will close the public portion of this meeting. Do we need to address anything else, Mr. Whitehead?
I think we're going to just be focusing on these conditions, number 2 and 5, it looks like.
Okay, so,
Should we get a motion and then?
yes, okay.
Actually, I have a question for Josh, because I'm not an engineer. If we take out condition 2, what is the impact on the property? I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that.
Well, Mr. Rogers did provide, obviously, the fire department's position. I think something he hit on that is traditionally something that we look at is pre versus post runoff. When you take a virgin piece of property that's all green and you build a house on it, you got the rooftop, you got the driveway. So unless there's some sort of detention, post-development runoff is going to exceed pre-development runoff. Here, I don't know if you've seen the site, driven by it, but it's, I think, 100%, if not 99-point-something% impervious. So the effect of removing this won't be any different from the runoff today, but it would it would continue the runoff that is happening today. And we have some testimony that says that's bad. That's good.
Okay, we've closed the public portion. Can I get a motion?
And my answer was not quite conclusive enough. I will say this, with condition number 1, with the bioswales, I think they probably will demonstrate, especially with the little landscape islands, that post will in fact be less than pre, even without the cistern. So I should put that on the record.
Can I get a motion?
Yes, move approval of agenda item number 5, case number SE 20-1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we're ready for discussion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers, let's look at these conditions.
Madam Chair, should we reopen? I think we're doing something naughty. We just closed the public hearing.
Right.
But we just called him up to the podium.
I don't want to do anything naughty.
Okay. Well, let's reopen the public hearing because I think what we need is his affirmation.
All right.
Right? Is that what you're seeking?
Yes.
Okay. So let's.
Don't we need to vote to reopen the public portion?
Yes.
Or you could say without opposition, and that'll do it.
Okay, without opposition. Mr. Rogers, you want to dispense with number 5 altogether?
Yes, remove number 5 altogether.
All right, and number 2 how do you want that worded that it would meet with your approval?
Consideration to install and implement a 10,000 gallon cistern or you say a 10,000 gallon cistern shall be considered as opposed to provided.
All right. So let's do that. A 10,000 gallon cistern will be considered to store the rainwater and so on and so forth.
Yes, rest of it will be fine.
All right. Well, Madam Chair, I would like for the conditions to reflect Mr. Rogers' consent on modifying condition number 2 and eliminating condition number 5.
So, is there any further discussion? We're closing the public portion now, right?
It's closed.
It's closed, okay. As of your question, okay. We've closed the public portion. We have the motion as amended. Yeah,
We need a
is there any other discussion?
A second.
Okay.
Thank
Is there any further discussion? I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Yes.
My concern with striking number 5 would simply be not.
Madam Chair, I think we need to reopen the public hearing. Because anytime we have testimony, we open the public hearing and hear both sides.
Okay.
So if we want additional testimony that is of a non-objective nature, we need to reopen the public hearing.
We shall now reopen the public hearing without
Well,
opposition.
Okay.
Thank you.
Without objection.
Okay.
I don't dispute the applicant's argument that the 1-inch requirement is impractical in this location, but I do think would be important to have some metric that OPD can look at when reviewing the plans for the bioswales and rain garden. And I would be very happy to ask for the applicant's perspective on what that sort of metric would be, but without something to look at and to review the plan by, I wouldn't know what to do with those bioswales and how to measure them. But I would like to ask the applicant to provide some testimony themselves on that question.
Could that not be resolved as this makes its way forward?
It could be.
I think we should do that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some good choices there, and we definitely have water problems downtown and in that area, so.
I think the applicant will work with the engineering department to figure this out.
Yes, and I think they've presented a plan with the rain gardens and the swales. I believe, and Brett can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what he's getting at is something a metric that will measure that these rain gardens and swales are enough to be equivalent to the 1 inch. They will not be equivalent to a 1 inch. And I don't think there's metrics there now. It's the science has not progressed enough, and I think that's part of one of the things we're doing, going through the water quality thing, coming up with something that's reasonable. So I don't know there's a metric, and again, the 1 inch is going beyond what we're getting away to begin with, which was the pervious pavement. The pervious pavement was not treating 1 inch of rainwater over the whole site. These rain gardens and bioswales we've recommended, and that we're saying we'll do with these conditions 1 and 3, will remove, I'm confident will remove every bit as much pollutants and probably more than the pervious pavement would have. And the reason I say more is because the pervious pavement had to have an under drain, so it slowly run through and filtered out some, and then it was going to drain into the drainage system. Over time, those voids are going to fill up, and it was just going to go through, or is it going to run off the surface and go directly into the drainage system? With the rain gardens, it's going to get down and saturate the mulch and the soil conditions that's under there, and be taken up by the plants. So this is more effective than the pervious pavement, what we're doing in 1 and 3. So I don't know that there's a metric, and I don't know that there's any quantifiable metric. That's some of the issues we've been having with TDEC and dealing with. I don't think, nobody has went to the science of going to measure and saying, well, this moved this much pollutant, this moves this much pollutant. Really need to get there, need to find ways to do that and measure it. So again, we're opposed to condition number 5 in its entirety.
Okay, thank you. In conjunction with our bylaws, we're now closing the public portion of this meeting. Dr. Pritchard,
Yes,
are we finished with our discussion at this time?
I think so, and we have the motion, and
And we have the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Madam
Dr. Pritchard.
Chair, we have one last item here, which
two.
is number 10.
We have two more.
We got
Number
number
nine.
9 and 10.
Hold it. Let me get number 9 up here.
Mm-hmm.
Public duty, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather be up here.
You'll got it.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9, case number SUP 19-40CO, 1126 Bridgewater Road. The request is an animal kennel, and staff recommends approval with conditions.
Okay, we see that we do have a number of opposition people here, so we're going to go ahead and hear the case.
Summer Smith with the Office of Planning and Development. This is SUP 1940 at 1126 Bridgewater Road. It's for an animal kennel, but it's really going to be more like a doggy daycare / doggy hotel. The property is 2.89 acres, and it's in the CA Conservation Agriculture and Fletcher Creek Overlay zoning districts. Here's the general location. It's in the Bridgewater neighborhood. This is in the little donut hole that we have. The city surrounds it, but it's a little donut hole of the county. Here's the vicinity map. The subject property is highlighted, and the whited out parcels are the property owners that were notified. Here's a Bridgewater subdivision. It was subdivided in 1943. This is going to be part of lot 72 in the subdivision. Here's an aerial of the property. As you can see, Bridgewater terminates on the western side, and then Appling Road terminates on the eastern side. There's currently a vacant structure there right now. There's several residential houses on Bridgewater. The rest is on the Bridgewater side. It's just vacant, heavily forested land, and there is a residential neighborhood to the south of the subject property. Land use and zoning, it's all CA. You have R8 to the east, and it's all in the Fletcher Creek overlay. And then to the south is a church. Here's some views of the property. The first view is from Bridgewater facing east. The second photo is from the termination of Appling Road. As you can see, it's very, very heavily forested, mature trees along the termination of Appling Road, basically separating the subject property from the church and residential neighborhood on that side. Here is a view of the terminus of Bridgewater Road. So basically you're just seeing more heavily wooded area. And then surrounding area photos. The first property is the neighboring single family home fronting Bridgewater. And then the second one is across the street on Bridgewater from the subject property. Here's a site plan. So the first thing I want to point out is there's going to be 46 dog kennels. The kennels are 65 feet from the side property lines, 120 feet from the back patio of the closest single family home, approximately 150 feet from the actual home itself, 290 feet from Bridgewater Road, and it's going to be the kennels itself will be 160 feet from the proposed extension of Appling Road. There's 1,800 square feet of office space, and there's 12 parking spaces, including one accessible space. Memphis 3.0 is not applicable to this proposal because it's in unincorporated Shelby County. Staff agrees that the approval criteria in regard to special use permits have been met. And in conclusion, the applicant is requesting an animal kennel with 46 kennels. It'll serve as daycare for when owners want to drop their dogs off at work. And they will have overnight boarding, which is especially used on holidays and when people travel for summer vacation, Christmas, Thanksgiving, etc. The applicant is proposing to extend Appling Road along the width of the lot to act as a frontage property, and the site will not be accessed at all from Bridgewater. The kennels will be located 65 from the side property lines, 129 feet from Bridgewater, 160 from the proposed extension, and 120 from the back patio of the neighboring property. And this project will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, utility facilities, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, and general welfare. So staff recommends approval with conditions. The conditions are on page 14, and I would just like to draw your attention to the first 3 conditions. The first one has to do with hours of outdoor playtime for the dogs. They'll be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7, Saturday and Sunday. All vegetation along the southern property line shall remain undisturbed. And then we have a friendly amendment to condition number 3, which shall state, as amended, a class 3 type C buffer or approved alternative shall be installed along Bridgewater Road and the northern property line. And the rest of the conditions remain the same and have to do with streetscape, lighting, and then the improvements to Appling Road. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any of the board members have any questions for Ms. Smith before we call the applicants and the opposition? Okay, applicant, please step forward, give us your name, address, and state your case in 10 minutes.
My name is Will Saltell. I'm with Parker Estes and Associates, 3460 Ridge Meadow Parkway. The purpose of this is to allow the CA the dog kennel is an allowed use under the CA zoning district with a special use permit. So we're not violating any of the conditions of the codes. The dogs are going to be kept inside during the majority of the day, except for some playtime, and as a result, the noise will be limited. We're going to install a wood fence along the property line and heavily landscape it, which will also attenuate any noise coming off of the property. I'll let Mr. Seidel continue.
My name's Brad Seidel, 1308 Ross Road, Olive Branch, Mississippi, and we're trying to expand. We've been in this business for 31 years. It's family owned. My daughters run the facilities. We've kind of outgrown. We've started a building, added another one, and added another one. We've got a large clientele. We're in DeSoto County, but we've got a large clientele that come from Germantown, Cordova, Bartlett, Raleigh, that come to us and board. We've got people coming from Oxford to board with us. We're not trying to have a nuisance in the subdivision. I think if anything, we're going to add and be a benefit to the area because we do have a large clientele that are coming from Memphis to board with us now. We offer things that most kennels don't. We kind of offer our dogs aren't really secluded. They're in an area, they go through a doggy door, it goes to an outdoor run, and then the outdoor run goes to a grass run. So we try to accommodate people and accommodate their dogs. We're dog people. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from our board members for the applicant and support at this time?
I just have a question. Do you board cats?
No, ma'am. Just dogs. We've had a lot of questions on that, but it would drive a cat crazy with 46 dogs. So.
Well, you just lost me when you said you can't do cats.
Okay, thank you. Now we have 10 cards for oppositions to speak, for the opposition to speak. And if you would please kind of limit it to about a minute apiece, or if you have somebody that already has something to say that you wanted to say, can you kind of combine it? So we're ready for the opposition. State your name, address, and your point of opposition, please.
My name is James Freeman. I live at 1139 Bridgewater Road.
which is across the street from the projected proposed property. I also own the property next door to me at 1143 Bridgewater. And back across the road, I own the property. It's a 2.5 acre plot across the street, which I had future plans of putting a house, and a bigger house, and the setback would be approximately 200 feet from Bridgewater Road, which would make that kennel about 150 feet from my side yard. Now, I'm a hunter, and I own bigger hounds, and I know dogs can be very loud, and also that scent can be very challenging to keep at bay. So I'm very much opposed to a dog kennel.
Thank you. Next opposition, we have 10. Just come right on up as the other one completes his presentation. Good morning.
My name is Tommy Rogers, 1142 Bridgewater Road, and I live the next door from that 1126. So I disapprove with that dog kennel being built next, excuse me, next door. I think it is loud and it smells.
Okay. Thank you. Next person.
My name is Lydia Duckworth, and I oppose the dog kennel. The reason being is because Bridgewater has always been a residential area only, and other reasons, it will increase traffic in the area. It would also increase the odor, present an odor, and it will also, to me, it seems that Bridgewater is not zoned for a dog kennel. Those are my oppositions.
Okay, thank you. Next. Come right on up.
Wayne Madison, 7267 Baptist Church Road. I'm a novice at this, so bear with me.
So speak into the microphone so we can
I'm
hear.
not close enough. How about that? Oh,
Okay.
like I said,
Go
I'm a
ahead.
novice at this, bear with me, please. But the special use permit, I'm not too familiar with that. With it being in a residential area, how is this allowed or approved? They said they met all the recommendations, and I'm not understanding that totally. So I kind of like to want clarity on that. Also, too, it was mentioned that there would be benefits to the community, or there would be benefits. I want to understand what benefit would I have as a residential owner in the Bridgewater community. Because when people come into the community with a development of property, houses, or whatever, the value, of course, increases. So that is my concern with this coming in. Will it decrease or will it increase my property value? And one more thing, doggy daycare. Is this going to be, this is also what I'm thinking is going to be a business where you would get profit. So this is commercial. It is something like commercial business as well as, special use permit. You can do this type of business. These are the three things that I don't really understand. So if I can get clarity on it, I appreciate it.
We'll have the applicant rebut those questions in a minute. Okay. Anyone else? We got about 6 more cards here. Name and address.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Patricia McGee, and I reside at 1212 Caleb Bridge Drive. And one of the main reasons that I oppose this kennel is because of all the traffic, all the different people that are coming in our neighborhood. We don't know what's coming in and what's going out. Memphis has a lot of crime, and so they can bring their crime into our neighborhood, not wanting to, but our neighborhood is like everybody know everybody, and everybody looks out for each other, and we don't know what we're getting. So, and we don't know how the design is going to be and how close it is on our neighbors. So I do oppose it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Come right on up. Step right up. We got about 5 more cards.
My name is Beverly Carnes. I live at 1142 Bridgewater Road, and the dog kennel will be right in my backyard. And I work. I'm 70 years old, but I still work. And I work 12 hours a day. And they're gonna let the dogs out at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to sleep. You can't tell me that I'm not gonna hear them. And they're gonna wake me up. I need my rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Hunt, Jones, Collins, and Hunt.
My name is Doris Hasler Jones. I'm at 1220 Bridgewater. And honestly, we do not need a dog kennel down there.
That was short and sweet.
Straight to the point.
Okay. Next, we got a couple from Hunt's, Cynthia Hunt, Juanita Hunt, and John Collins. Okay. All right. Okay, we're gonna give the applicant a chance to rebut, and you might wanna zero in on Ms. Madison's questions.
The one question that I really do want to address is the allowable use. The zoning of the property is conservation agriculture. That's the underlying zoning. It has nothing to do with what the use of that property is. The property immediately to the south of us is a radio tower site for WKNO. So you know, and it's all zone CA. Under the UDC, with a CA zoning, the dog kennels are allowed with a special use permit, which is why we're here today. If it's actually one of the few, other than some commercial ones that also allow dog kennels. But the CA zoning with the special use permit is allowed by the zoning of the property, the underlying zoning. As far as the smells and all, the kennels will be washed daily, mopped daily. The interior, any poop will be picked up and disposed of, not left out on the ground. The dogs will stay inside the buildings the majority of the day, and only be let out at times to play. And those areas where they will be allowed to play are in the fenced areas that are shown on the site plan.
Okay. Do you have anything else to say?
Yes, ma'am. I understand everybody's concern, and I've mulled this over and mulled it over, and the only issue really is the sound. There's no smell. Everything, all the solids that are in the yards are picked up daily. They're not washed. They're not drained. They're physically picked up and bagged and put in a container and disposed of. I can't sit here and say dogs don't bark. You're going to hear a dog bark. But all these dogs, they're fed inside, they're let out to play and go to the bathroom, and they come in. We're doing everything we can. Between all our runs, I'm putting up rubber matting on all the chain link fences, up 3 feet, so the dogs won't fence fight or bark. We're going extensive on landscaping. We don't want to be a nuisance, but I can't sit here and say, you're not going to hear a dog bark. In the mornings when you feed them and the staff shows up, they may get excited and bark, but it's not constant barking all day long. When you let them out, they go outside, they play, they go to the bathroom, and they come back in. And that's, like I said, I want to voice my concern. We do everything. We're going to plant, just like we did at our facility, Tallulah Green Giants. They get 20 feet at the base and 40 feet high. They're evergreens to buffer the noise. We put mats up. We do everything we can to try to contain the noise.
Okay.
That's all
Thank
I've
you.
got.
Okay, before we close the public portion, we're gonna see, do we have any questions for either the opposition and or the applicant from our board?
I do, Madam Chairman. Mr. Seidel, would you come back up? I think some of the concern is, it says outdoor group play is from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., but it's not that entire time, correct?
No,
Do you
ma'am.
just let them out in small groups?
Well, not even in groups. We rotate them.
Okay.
You'll have a yard that will accommodate 4 runs.
Mm-hmm.
We feed them, we never mix the dogs, there's never fighting, we don't put them together. They'll rotate one, he'll go out, go to the bathroom, he comes back in, and then they may get another one long enough for him to go outside and go to the bathroom. But they're not left out in the runs all day, no, no ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the board to the opposition and/or applicants at this time?
And Madam Chair, just very briefly, to discuss the process, so the point of the special use permit process is to look at individual sites to see if they are amenable to the special use. So the special use permit process allows the city council or the county commission an opportunity to see if whether these host of uses are appropriate on a particular property. And to that point, the special use permit process has 2 public hearings, one before this body, which is a recommendation, and finally to the county commission. So regardless of whether this body votes yay or nay, that'll be a recommendation, and it'll go up to the county commission, which meets twice a month. And we will mail notice for that meeting as we did for this meeting. So we'll have another, that'll be the final public hearing. So that's a little bit of process. I wanted the audience to know that this is part 1 of a 2-part series.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no other questions, we will,
Close.
well, we got an opposition that wants to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Our board will hear what you want to say before we close the public portion. Does somebody have something to say in the opposition? Okay.
But back on the special use permit, I think I'm getting clarity somewhat now on that, based on what was just told by the gentleman down there. But there will be a business type thing, right? Just actually they're operating a business in this area. Am I correct or not?
Right.
But anyway, that was my concern, because in a residential community, we're gonna allow a business to come in. My concern is what is other doors is gonna open for the opportunity for business to come in. And as me being a property owner, like I asked before, I would like to know how would this benefit me as a property owner?
Mr. Whitehead, can you address the question about the business portion?
So that is many of the permitted uses through the special use permit process. I'm thinking horse boarding, a lot of animal-related businesses you'll find as special use permit uses in the CA Agricultural District. And if you think about it, the CA Agricultural District is probably our most varied zoning district. It goes from Rosemark to Shelby Forest to Bridgewater to Quinn Ridge. It is in many ways the default zoning prior to someone upzoning it for development. So we have a lot of different looking parcels that are zoned CA, probably more so than any other kind of zoning.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anybody can give you the benefit this time. So at this time, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting, and we're going to ask for a motion.
Move approval of agenda item number 9, case number SUP 19-40CO.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Do I have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion fails, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, agenda item number 10, SUP 20-01 Klondike, special use permit for a social service institution at 1309, 17, and 19 Jackson. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All to your left. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have opposition here, so we will hear this case. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pulling up the presentation. Okay.
We're gonna get it. We got it.
Morning. We're looking at special use permit 20-1 for a special use permit application of the new year. Location is 1309, 1317, and 1319 Jackson Avenue. All three parcels of which belong or have on their property the same building. And the building includes one additional parcel as well. It's owned by Steins Investment. The applicant is the Connection Center, and the representative is Mr. Taurus Brooks, all three of which are effectively the same party. The request is a special use permit for a social service institution. The area of the site is approximately 0.4 acres, and the zoning is commercial mixed use 3. Here's a location map showing the site in the Klondike neighborhood of North Memphis. Here's the North Olympic Park subdivision of 1898. We see the site in the southwest corner. 121 notices of public hearing were mailed. 2 letters of support were received, one of which is from the Tennessee Department of Corrections, and 15 letters of opposition were received. Here's an aerial photograph of the site. So we see the 4 parcels total that make up the building, the westernmost 3 of which make up the site. We see Lick Creek running to the south of the site, which is a fairly major concrete channeled waterway in this city. To the north, we see Klondike with a pretty high degree of both commercial and residential vacancy. And to the south, we see Speedway Terrace. Zoning, again, it's a commercial CMU 3 corridor. To the south is residential urban 1, historic, that's Speedway Terrace. And the land use map. So mix of vacancy and commercial along Jackson Avenue, and residential on either side of Jackson, again with that Lick Creek buffer between Speedway Terrace and Jackson Avenue. So some photographs of the site. Here's the primary entrance to the building. You can see it once was the Memphis Institute of Barbering, Inc., owned by Mr. Brooks as well. Here is the parking area, and here is a view of the 0 setback along Jackson of the building. So there is a planting strip along Jackson. Here's a view east down Jackson. This is on the building, has a stairway up to the 2nd floor, which I ascended and took this photo looking over Speedway Terrace. The south, here's a view of Lick Creek from that same terrace. And another view of Lick Creek, as well as the Madison Heights Bayou feeding into it on the right-hand side of the photo. So the building in question is on the left side of this photograph. And looking at some adjacent properties now, this building on the left is an adjacent beauty salon. That building is also owned by Mr. Brooks, or that parcel, I should say. It's part of the same building. This is across the street. We have a barber shop on the right-hand side of the building, right-hand side of the photograph, excuse me, as well as a parcel on the west that includes, I believe, a vacant commercial structure and a residential structure. And I believe these parcels are both in common ownership as the owner of the subject site. This is a vacant vehicle service structure to the west of the subject site, not in common ownership. And here's a site plan. It doesn't give us too much detail. It's just showing us the building north is facing down, and we are requiring a more in-depth survey and site plan prior to sending this to City Council, as well as we would like to see greater details about the floor plan, the details around the programming, social service programming, et cetera. So what this use is specifically is a transitional home. It would be providing transitional housing as well as social service programming for approximately 50 men. That would include ex-convicts, formerly incarcerated men, recently re-entering society, as well as other types of men in rehabilitation. The applicant would get approval as an approved transitional home from the Tennessee Department of Corrections. So we asked what are similar institutions in Memphis, and there are 5 that meet the following criteria. TDOC approved transitional home serving men in Memphis city limits with 10 or more beds. And those 5 are Adult Challenge, Forgiveness House, the Lighthouse Mission Ministries, the Memphis Union Mission, and the Warriors Center. And we have a slide on each one just to look at how many beds there are and what is its zoning and adjacent land uses looking like. So this is a map of those 5 in pink, as well as the proposed institution in yellow. Okay. First, we have Adult Challenge, 33 North Cleveland Street, so just north of Madison Avenue. It has 45 beds, and we see that it is also zoned CMU3 and is also directly adjacent to RU1 residential zoning. We see that there is a fair amount of multifamily housing in brown around the site. Forgiveness House at 3515 Summer Avenue has 11 beds. There is office zoning to its south. The Lighthouse Mission Ministries at 3630 Jackson Avenue has 90 beds and appears to be located in a single-family residential district, actually, directly across the street from an industrial district on the other side. The Memphis Union Mission at 600 Poplar, just north of where we were looking before, or in a previous presentation, has 50 beds and is zoned mixed use in the Uptown District. There's no single-family residential zoning around here. And finally, the Warriors Center at 634 Sem Street has 69 beds. This is in CMU1 zoning in the Orange Mound area. That's Southern Avenue, the major street to the north, and it is in close proximity to single-family residential zoning. Or that's multifamily residential zoning with mostly single-family uses. So in conclusion, the applicant has requested a special use permit for a social service institution at 1309, 1317, and 1319 Jackson Avenue. The proposed facility would provide transient housing and social service programs for approximately 50 rehabilitating men. The institution would be approved by the Tennessee Department of Corrections as a transitional housing provider, although it would not serve ex-convicts exclusively. There are 5 existing TDOC-approved transitional homes that provide 10 or more beds for men in Memphis. Notably, each one is faith-based. Unlike the proposed institution, several are in similar proximity to residential zoning as the proposed site. This use would provide a vulnerable population with a service that is needed both regionally and locally, and staff finds that the request meets the criteria for a special use permit. Staff does recommend, however, a 4-year sunset condition to ensure that the institution's operations uphold strict compliance with the special use permit approval criteria. So we are recommending approval with conditions. Thank you.
Thank
May
you.
I have those conditions if you would like.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis?
It was TDOC approval. Does that mean they're going to regulate or manage that housing?
No, that's questions from the Land Use Control Board. Okay, we're ready for the applicant and the opposition. Applicant first, come up, make your presentation, give us your name and address.
Good morning, good morning. Taurus Brooks, 4847 Quintel Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 38128. I'm coming today to just talk on behalf of the Connection Center. I'm the executive director. I'm the prior owner of that same strip. I used to own the barber school there for about 20 years. I do recall years before that, before even bringing that barber school in, that entire Jackson corridor was all dilapidated. We come in for the last 20 years, we've been doing a lot of rehabilitation in that area building that particular area back up. My students during that time, I owned in the barber school from 2000, February of 2000, all the way up to May of last year. That particular institution, we lost federal funding. I no longer was able to provide that particular service to the students as a barber school. We decided at that time to utilize that same building to be able to provide services, social services. One of the things that we noticed as a barber school, that a lot of our students, which was prior felons also, was attending our school for years. We was probably graduating about 100 students per year with that same similar background. And what we decided here to do was fulfill a need also and utilize properties that we currently owned. We wanted to bring this particular service in. We contacted the Tennessee Department of Correction to see if there was a need because we wanted to help. With this type of institution, it will be regulated by the Tennessee Department of Correction. Our clients will be their client. We'll just be providing services according to their rules and regulations. They'll be training us to perform those services, including safety, security, staffing, and all of those things are part of the training with them. We're not doing this to compete with the other institutions that's in the areas that's already performing those services. We're just mainly bringing in the housing component of that service. We'll be outsourcing a lot of the other services that's needed. Our goal is to work along with Memphis Urban League. We was in a meeting with them yesterday, trying to find out how we can partner to provide these wraparound services that the client would need. Our goal is trying to get them back out to be productive taxpayer citizens. We do understand that these guys will be released from incarceration at some point. Our goal is trying to release them into a facility that we can give them some assistance to become productive taxpayer citizens. We don't want them to be released because they will be released without any services at all, and they'll still be coming back into these same communities. We just wanted to put our hands on them. It'll be a controlled environment, 24/7. They won't be allowed to just transition and walk throughout the community. We do have transportation to get them to where they need to go. It won't be any loitering. We do have space on the back side of the facility for smoking and things of that nature. The clients will go through a screening process when coming into the institution. TDOC we would have to report every little minute thing that goes on with the client. We have to have their approval. And TDOT would definitely be hands-on. They'll be still reporting to their parole and probation officer. Our facility is definitely a friendly facility to the public. As far as the Memphis Police Department is definitely welcome. At any point, we do random drug screenings, drug testing, anything of that nature. So with that, any oppositions, we want to save the rest of the time for questions at the end.
Thank you. You have something to say?
Well, no, my name is Dinah Bostic. I'm the clinical director of the Connection Center, and I
Okay.
just want to answer any questions that may be addressed to the Connection
Do
Center.
we have any questions of the applicant?
I have one question for the applicant. What are the economics of this? Does TDOC pay for each, former prisoner to come and be a part of this program? And then how long are they in the site before, how long is the program, and then how's that? What are the economics?
TDOT normally pays for 90 days. They do have grants that they have that's available for those who may have emergency and need to stay longer. In our institution, one of the requirements from the department is that we work along with the client on getting jobs, trying to get job placement for those who desire to stay longer. They definitely can stay in the institution as long as they're willing to abide by the rules and regulations, and if they're able to continue to pay beyond that particular time period.
So what does TDOC pay per user for those 90 days?
TDOC normally pays on a weekly base roughly about $150 per week, per bed, per person.
And if they extend after the 90 days, then the individual will be on their own. That's part of the program. See, this is an institutional program to help them transition. So 90 days from TDOT is only a buffer to give them the stability to navigate into the system, getting their IDs, something as simple as how to get their driver's license and things of that sort. So it's just a buffer until they can get on their own, after which the individual is responsible for their own stay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have 5 people that are in opposition present at this time. So you can come forward. Opposition? You got about 2 minutes each.
Hello, everybody. My name is Randall Garrett. I'm with the Klondike Smoky City CDC. I'm the housing director. I'm here on behalf of my executive director, Ms. Quincy Morris. She's been in this community doing work for over 20 years. She's been a part of the community for over 70 years. And we're in opposition of this proposal because we've been hearing from the community. And the community has been coming back and telling us that they are concerned about, they have safety concerns, and they have concerns about the work we've been doing in the community, and it might derail that work that we've been doing. So just for a quick synopsis of what we've been doing in the community, we just lobbied the county government to give us 159 lots, and we're trying to do beautification efforts. We got a jobs program with cutting the lots, and eventually we're going to do development, affordable housing, and market rate housing on those lots. We lobbied the city to do the Jackson Corridor plan, which is where this is proposed to be, where they're going to do infrastructure, curb cuts, and beautification, signage, entry signs on Jackson and Watkins, and on Bellevue and Jackson, and better lighting and parking for businesses to come. The history of Klondike is the first African-American community incorporated in the city. Orange Mound is the first African-American community, but in the city is Klondike. It has a very historic history, and it's known for a black middle class. And the community has been fighting for years to get it back to that point. And they have chosen this area to be their business district, and they fought for that. And although I know it's blighted now, we've been fighting for years to get the improvements done to the street, to get businesses to come to this neighborhood. We're also bordering Vecca and Uptown and Crosstown and Speedway Terrace, which are also neighborhoods that are surrounded that are pretty much coming up in value as well. And so we wanted to continue that trend for the residents of our community and do it in an affordable way. And so what the community has been concerned, and we've been getting calls about the safety. I don't know exactly what you would call it. The residents of this facility are going to be let out in the morning, and I understand that they'll be let out as far as they might have transportation or whatever, but they are going to be free from in the morning to the day. And we have some crime areas in our community that we don't want exacerbated. If you have somebody who's getting out, maybe they have a drug issue or anything like that, we don't want them to be able to have easy access to some of our areas that we have that we're trying to combat. The work that the CDC does, we have a PJA meeting, and we have department heads and different things, and the community comes and meets with us every month. And like I said, we are trying to bring the community, develop the community in a grassroots way. And we also agree with the purpose of this facility. And so nobody disagrees with the purpose, but we just saying the location of it is kind of counterproductive to what we've been trying to do.
Did you give us your address? I didn't remember.
My address is 1889 Waverly, but I work at 943 Valentine at the Klondike Smoky City CDC.
Okay. Thank you. You have another person in opposition? Name and address, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Portia Stevens. Well, as a resident and a property owner, I'm Janella Ingram at 1233 North Parkway. I'm also one of the founding members of the Crosstown Memphis CDC. So there's overlap between Speedway Terrace and the Klondike Smoky City CDC. So we work diligently with that organization to help improve both neighborhoods. I also work over at Crosstown Concourse. So I am, an advocate for my neighborhood. I also have used the barber school, more than a few times. I definitely understand their mission. I'm opposing the fact that they want to change the barber school into transitional housing. However, I understand why they're wanting to do it. I just think the location is just not advantageous for the work that's being done in the whole community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
And ma'am, just if you can approach the podium real quick. I just want to make sure I have the minutes right. You're Portia Stevens or Michelle Ingram?
Janella Ingram.
Janelle, thank you.
All right, next.
Good morning. Sorry about that question earlier, but it was one that's been weighing on my mind. And I'd just like to submit to that.
Give me your name and address.
Justin Gillis, 1276 Faxon Avenue, resident of Speedway Terrace, member of the Speedway Terrace Neighborhood Association, board member of the Crosstown Memphis CDC. In the second line of the TDOC's approved transitional housing website, it specifically says, TDOC does not license or regulate transitional housing. The agency does require submissions such as costs, programs, and other services, but they do not regulate. So there is no official monitoring from the state of Tennessee, just to get that out there. If you review the opposition letters that you've received, you'll see a large number of members of the community, including people that have deep ties to recovery. And they point out that the location would put these transitional residents in a bad position. They're within 2 blocks of bars, liquor stores, and known drug hotspots. It's just not a good location for transitional housing for people that are trying to make a new home for themselves. There's a large number of single-family residents that are against this development. And as was mentioned, these residents would be released just like at Union Mission, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they won't be allowed back in until 6 p.m. That means they have to go and find somewhere to go. Most of them don't have vehicles, so they're going to be wandering through our neighborhoods. We have a hard time accepting that, and that's why we're opposed to this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another couple of more opposition, and then we'll ask questions as needed. We have Tate in opposition. Name and address.
Well, my name is Myron Tate. I'm renting the building at 1333 Jackson Avenue, and I'm all for it. I think it's good to give people a second chance. I also was a student at the barber.
So you're in support?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you should, okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I was once a barber student at the barber school, and I went from being a student to being a barber, to being a manager of a shop, being the owner of a shop, and now the owner of a school. And I think it's really good for the community because everybody needs a second chance. And by them being next door, I think a lot of them would like to come up and get a haircut. Some will probably become a barber, student. And I think, like I said, everybody deserves a second chance, and I think it'd be beneficial for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. So I misread a couple of these, and we have another one in support. George, I can't read your last name.
Conyers.
Conyers.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is George Conyers, and I'm an ex-fellow. And my ancestors grew up and was raised and lived in the neighborhood of Klondike, 942 North Montgomery. And my address is 725 Hastings. And a lot of my criminal activities was done right there in North Memphis in Klondike. So when I went to prison and I got out, I wanted to come back home. And if you reject me from coming home, then when I go somewhere else, how are they going to accept me if my own people won't accept me? So I got sober right there in North Memphis, in Klondike. And that was in 1995, and I've been sober ever since. And I came back and I do volunteer work at the VA hospital. I do volunteer work at the me and son on Poplar. I do volunteer work on Bellevue. I do volunteer work at the Son on Poplar Serenity Group. But I've been doing that for the last 17 years. I've been volunteering, and I do the work in my neighborhood because my neighborhood is home. And if you reject me from coming home to get better, then where else do I have to go? So I'm real supportive of this system coming up, and I think it'll be a big advantage, not only to North Memphis, but to the whole Memphis city. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to give our board members a chance to ask questions of the opposition, and then we'll bring back up the applicant to do your rebuttal. Do we have any questions of the opposition at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for your rebuttal as an applicant to what you've heard.
Okay. Thanks again. You know, for the opposition, I do understand what the perception is. But again, you know, even with the community being awarded those 150 lots, hopefully they're going to be low-income lots. And hopefully these guys get an opportunity once they become productive taxpayer citizens, that they'll have an opportunity to come back in that same community and purchase homes. I'm hoping that they won't be biased. I'm hoping that Klondike Smoky City CDC have done a little research to see that there are probably people that live in that community who have a background already. We don't hold it against them. These people are just wanting an opportunity to come into the facility to prepare themselves to be productive citizens. Yes, there are already facilities that's doing similar in the community already, and we haven't heard anybody trying to get them out of the area. There's halfway houses down on the corner of Tutwiler and Bellevue, been there forever. I was reading it in a lot of the opposition letters that was part of the package. And those facilities already exist. What we're trying to do is provide a more structural to remove some of the complaints that they currently have, like transient walk-in and loitering. We're hoping that we can combat those things. We're hoping with the monies that's been allocated for the Jackson Avenue corridor, we didn't ask for any monies to do this facility. We're using our monies to even the infrastructure and things can still be done on Jackson. We're not hindering anything. Matter of fact, we're a little bit ahead of the plan, already rehabbing what's going on in Jackson, and we've been doing it for years. You know, the monies that's allocated, according to the gentleman, is allocated for infrastructures and signs, and like, we would love to see that also. I don't see where we'll be hindering anything that's allowed or that's coming in with the Memphis 3.0 plans. Again, so I'm hoping, did I miss any questions that?
Yes. One gentleman mentioned that with TDC, if you look at I have the guidelines of TDC and what is required and which we will follow. A TDC officer will be assigned to supervise all cases and coordinate with the staff of the provider. That's on page 8 of 9 of the TDC guidelines. So there will be an officer assigned to our facility, meaning not necessarily housed, but someone that we must coordinate before someone leaves. I know there was a question about safety and or concern. One thing that TDC requires is that everything our clients would have what's called a daily operating list. When they come out, it's not like they get up in the morning and they walk the streets. No, everything, which is a week prior, we have to give they have to write a minute by minute. Like say, for example, if they go in for a job interview, we have to have it written out where they would be every single day and turned into TDOT a week prior to the week. So if they're going out for a job interview, McDonald's, and we know they're going to have a job interview at 11 o'clock on March 15th. We have to let TDC know a week prior. It has to be approved. Why? Because TDC, along with the housing supervisor, will do random checks on these individuals. This is a strict monitoring, highly supervised program. This is not a boarding house. This is not a rooming house. This is not a shelter. Unlike many of the facilities in that community, this is a regulated facility program service helping individuals that will come out of prison, but it would help them to transition to to live independently and be able to be effective and productive citizens in the community once they leave our program. So this is a program, not just a shelter. I think that was the only thing he had asked. But the guidelines, I had that because I wanted to clarify that there will be
Thank you.
supervision.
Thank you. Any further questions of the applicant and/or the opposition?
I have a question. I know some of the opposition said that the residents will be let out in the morning and then they're free until evening. Is that the case?
No, absolutely not. With the program, as a matter of fact, and you can speak with the director of the National Urban League, although there's been opposition, we've had a lot of support. We have a lot of people and a lot of programs that are in support of this program. One in particular, just yesterday, the National Urban League asked us to make it mandatory for all of our clients to go through their program of not just getting a job, but retaining a job, dealing with soft skills, dealing with conflict resolution. They want to partner with us in doing this. The mayor is basically on the board of the Men of Allure in Nashville. That's what we're mimicking, something that is necessary in our community. So no, that is totally false. It's not like they can just roam the neighborhood. Everything is structured. That daily activity log, even if they want to go to Walmart, anytime they deviate from the program, let's say they need to go to Walmart, they had a cut on their arm, it has to be approved. It's not like they can just roam and go to Walmart. Everything is structured. They have curfews. When they come in, they have to do random drug tests. The TDOT comes in and out. They can do random searches without any type of notice or what have you. We have to notify the Memphis Police Department. They have an open door policy. This is going to be a highly structured. They're not in prison. However, it's a process where the courts will make it mandatory that they have to abide by the Tennessee Department of Corrections guidelines. So no, it's no roaming. And they have a curfew that everyone must be in at a certain time.
And again, we're not a shelter. We're not a rooming house. And those are the ones that we're trying to help those particular clients avoid. We're trying to get them to come into a more structured environment. Again, they're going to be released, whether they're going to be released with services or not. And we're just trying to bring them through with some services other than just turning loose, where they will become probably a tenant at a rooming house or a shelter of some sort.
Thank you. Any further questions of the
Yes.
applicant?
So, during your daily operations, as far as visibility, the neighbors that I'm listening to, I'm always sensitive to neighborhoods. Will they be able to see activity?
Inside the facilities?
No. Anything outside? Like, I mean, you have areas where people can go and just talk out back. I know that building.
No.
So they can't see any of that?
No,
behind it?
and we can make it where we can put blinders on the windows, because we don't want the public, we want this to be as low-key as possible. We don't want signs. It won't be signs up there stating what's going on, what it is. You know, this,
I think of the federal halfway house that's out in Winchester.
Correct.
Most people don't even know it's there.
That's correct.
That's why I was wanting to
correct. You
make
won't
sure.
even know we exist.
Yeah.
You won't know we exist.
And it's not like people be hanging out in the front or anything like that. It's nothing like that.
Any further questions?
And I think it's been asked and answered, I just cannot remember. Okay, so they get out at 7, they have a job interview. How do they get to the job interview?
We have vans.
You have vans.
Yes, we have vans.
So they're gonna get out at 7, they're gonna get in your vans and do whatever
And
they
have
need to do.
go there. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have transportation.
Okay.
I have a question, but everybody's not gonna have a job interview on every day. So,
That's correct, but they're job seeking, and then we're also they're going out for outsourcing. They gotta work on other things. They gotta get driver license. We're trying to get state ID. They're going to different other organizations to take life skill training classes. So we got plenty, they'll have a daily schedule of things to do. It won't be necessarily just job placement. Some may also need substance training, substance abuse, where we'll also be partnering with treatment facilities for those who may need treatment. You know, so they'll have a schedule of where they'll be going. If not, they will be inside that facility.
This may be a question for Mr. Whitehead, but this is a recommendation for a 4-year sunset condition. What happens, if this were to be approved, what happens in 4 years?
It would be 4 years from the city council resolution, technically. So, assuming it goes to city council and it's approved, we would tag it. So a few months in advance of that 4-year anniversary date, we would contact the property owner. If he's non-responsive, then he'll be cited to environmental court, just like any zoning violation. The zoning code says any condition of approval that is being broken is as if the code itself is being broken. So it's a citation. The last time we had one of these sunset provisions, if you recall, was St. Vincent de Paul Soup Kitchen, where Madison Heights Methodist used to be. It was their parish house. And they got the 4-year sunset, they came back, and by that time, they did what they told people they were going to do. And then I think this body gave it you can continue to do 4-year or 2-year or 10-year comebacks, or you can just say, okay, you're good. So y'all would have that option in 4 years, assuming this gets approved.
And I would add that as conditioned, the final buck is with the Land Use Control Board in 4 years. So to either say you're good to go forever, you're not allowed, or to add another sunset condition.
So we would come back here in 4 years, is that what I'm hearing?
And it
the way
would
it's
not have to
conditioned?
go to city council
Okay.
afterwards.
All right, got it. Thank you.
All right, hearing no more questions, we will close the public portion of the meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, move approval of agenda item number 10, case number SUP 20-1.
Second.
I hear a motion and I hear a second. Is there any further discussion? Do we need to discuss it anymore? Hearing no discussion, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
I have no's from Sharp and Tolles and ayes from everyone else. So it's 8 yay, 2 nay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. This seems to conclude our meeting of March the 12th, 2020. Anything else? Those of you who want to walk with us down to the Waffle Shop, please feel free to do so. Other than that, meeting is adjourned.